Welcome to episode 1 of DearPsychopomp. Let's talk about death. If you're new here, welcome. If you're not, welcome back. Please note that I am not a professional psychologist, doctor, or lawyer. The information and discussions shared on this podcast are intended for informational purposes only and are not a substitute for professional advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Some of the topics covered may be emotionally intense or triggering, especially for those who are still processing grief or similar experiences. Please take care of yourself, and if you feel that any content is too triggering or overwhelming, it's important to seek support from a loved one or a licensed professional. Your well-being is important, and I encourage you to prioritize self-care as you listen. I'm Anne-Marie, your host and Death Doula. I have a dark sense of humor, I have a badass skull collection, and people avoid me at parties. But before you run off screaming into the night, I'll let you know that I'm not here to collect souls or lead people to the afterlife. As a dear friend of mine once told me, I'm simply the last tour guide. A death doula, much like a birth doula, supports people through the process of dying. Instead of helping people come into the world, I help guide them out. And it's honestly one of the most rewarding things I do. To be there in the moments when someone passes away, it feels different and electric and life-changing. And you can feel that energy around you, and it's intense, and it's overwhelming, and it's sad, and it's a little bit of everything. I help with the emotional and spiritual side of things, and also the practical aspects of death. You know, it's expensive to live, and it's expensive to die. And truly, if you can pre-plan ahead of time funeral arrangements and get your will done and your advanced care plan, it just makes you one step ahead of the game. It's like getting insurance. I mean, here in British Columbia, I moved here from Manitoba, and we had to change our insurance, and they actually asked if I wanted earthquake insurance. I was like, are you kidding me? Where did I just move to? What are we doing? And if British Columbians in the Kootenays and Okanagan are getting earthquake insurance, why don't you have a will done yet? Why don't you have an advanced care plan yet? It's just, those are just in case, but the will and the advanced care plan and everything like that, it's going to happen. It's, like I say, talking about it is not going to make it happen immediately, but avoiding talking about it isn't going to make it not happen. So I stress with all my soul, please jot down your last wishes and let someone know where that piece of paper is. Anyways. I am like a gentle guide for the last chapter of life, with a little laughter, a little sadness, and, just making sure that people are comfortable and at peace. And everybody has an assumption about death, and that stems from a traumatic death that we have witnessed or been told about. And so for me, finding out that my father died alone, my fear is dying alone. I don't want to die alone. I didn't want my dad to die alone. And I know that some people do want to die alone, and they want to have that opportunity to say goodbye to themselves or to not have their loved ones witness something. And it's so different for everybody. But when I go, I would love to have someone holding my hand. and playing music. So we'll back up a little bit. Why are death doulas even necessary? In the past, death wasn't something that we shied away from. In ancient times, actually, death was seen as a very natural part of life, a transition. There were shamans and spiritual guides and family members that were involved in helping the dying person prepare for the journey. And once they passed on, they would clean and anoint the body and wrap it in a shroud homemade by all their loved ones, and then put them back in the earth to go back to the earth. These communities would gather and talk openly about what's to come and ensure that the person who was dying had a sense of peace and closure, and that they were seen and heard and appreciated, and that they made a difference. You can't change the world, but you can sure try to change your corner of the world. And fast forward to 21st century, we've made amazing strides in medicine, cures for diseases that were once death sentences. And don't get me wrong, I absolutely adore modern medicine. I have Crohn's disease. I was diagnosed when I was, I want to say 23, after a couple years of testing. And if I had been born 30 years earlier, I wouldn't be here right now. And fun fact, the movie Aliens, pardon me, where the chestburster is coming out after dinner, the screenwriter actually wrote that in to equate to the pain of having Crohn's disease, and I fully agree. Anyways, on the flip side, we've been extending our lives, and it's been really neat to be able to have all this extra time with all our favorite people. But in our quest to live longer, we've kind of forgotten how to die well. You can live well and you can die well, no matter how it happens, by finding that inner peace ahead of time. And we've become so terrified of death that we've tucked it into a dark corner of our minds and pushed it to the very back of any conversation we have, which I find kind of ironic, because video games and movies, we almost romanticize death because we know it's fake. But as soon as we are confronted with the actual thing, we don't know what to do. We don't know what to say. And don't worry, that's why I'm here. It's different to mourn and grieve and be bereaved in the 21st century. We have social media and cell phones and the internet, and it complicates things. I'm sure you've heard stories of where someone has passed away and some looky-loo posted it on Facebook, and that's how the family found out. Can you imagine finding out that way? It just astonishes me. Anyways, that is not the point of this conversation. It's more so, I do this and I scare people away, but you don't really hear people coming up to you casually saying like, hey, if I die, this is what I want. Or, hey, do you want to talk about death? That doesn't happen. For me, it happens more often than you, I'm sure. But I don't mind nerding out about death. I love the science of it. I love the mystery of it, the whimsy of it, and the beauty of it. And I like talking about death because it reminds me that I'm alive. I'm a part of something greater than myself. I am the universe witnessing its own existence. I believe each one of us is like a note in the grand symphony that the universe is playing. Some notes are soft, some are bold, some are fleeting. while others linger in the air like a beautiful chord. Together we create a melody that echoes across time, each of us contributing to a harmony far bigger than ourselves. And though the song may shift, evolve, or rest, every note, no matter how brief, adds depth and meaning to the composition. Without each note, the song would be incomplete, and without the song, we would not hear the music of life at all. But I digress. So modern medicine has made death feel more like an enemy than a part of life. Something to be fought at all costs with no real room for acceptance or understanding. And again, that's where I come in with a cup of tea, a comfortable chair, air hug, fist bump. I help people make peace, pardon me, with what's inevitable. I offer a safe space to talk about fears and hopes and dreams and regrets and, believe it or not, joy. Have you ever romanticized about how you'd prefer to go? It happens when you're talking to a friend and they're like, oh, my grandma passed away in her sleep, or, oh, there was this terrible accident, or, oh, somebody, accomplished suicide. It makes you think about your own mortality, and if you had a choice, how would you prefer to go? If I could choose how to leave this world, it would be on a crisp autumn evening, just as the sun dips below the horizon and twilight settles in. Then I can take off my sunglasses and see the first stars beginning to twinkle and try and reorient myself and find the North Star. The air would carry the scent of freshly cut grass through the open window, and I'd be able to hear the lazy song of the creek. Birds would be singing their evening calls, and my favorite music would be filling the room. It might terrify some people because it's things like Korn and Linkin Park and Huxley Workman and Sleeping at Last. It's a little bit of everything. But familiar songs that have always brought me peace. I'd be surrounded by the warmth of the memories, the photos, the objects, and the love of those closest to me. And I'd want them to be laughing and mingling with the peaceful symphony of the world outside. And in that moment, surrounded by all of that, I would feel at ease, knowing that I'm not alone and that death has come not as a stranger, but as a companion, guiding me gently into whatever comes next. And I do see death like greeting an old friend, someone you haven't seen in a long time. At first there might be some hesitation, it's been a while, but when she steps forward with open arms, you realize she's not an enemy. She's not there to harm you. She's here to walk you home. Death, to me, is the gentle guide who has been waiting patiently, ready to help you navigate the transition, giving comfort and companionship as you cross into the next chapter. And like an old friend, she brings a sense of peace, letting you know that you're not alone in this journey, and that she will be there to help you find your way, no matter what comes next. And just in case, I do carry, I call him Sharon, but Heron's obulus with me everywhere I go, just in case. And I told my partner that when I go, I want to be cremated or aquamated if it comes to Canada by then. And I want that coin to be tossed in with it so I can take the journey and cross the lake. And the truth is, most people don't even know that they can have control over their death. But you can. You can decide how you want to pass, what you want to leave behind, who you want to be surrounded by, and even what kind of music you play. Even if it's not Korn, that's okay. The point is, we need to normalize talking about death again. Not in a creepy, scary, dark, let's never sleep again kind of way, but in a healthy and empowering way. Death isn't the bad guy here. The fear of death is. And of course we're scared of death. We can't practice for it. Though I feel like I've died 100 times. And that makes me think that dying is easy. Life is hard. You get one chance. But the amount of times I have felt brokenhearted and defeated and like I lost a part of myself, and I had to build that back up. You know, when we stop fearing death, we start living more fully and dying more peacefully. And we do that with knowledge and understanding. You know, knowledge is the enemy of fear. And if I can make one person not scared of death or not be alone as they die, then my work is done. And this is my legacy. This is what I want to contribute to the world. And when we can look at death not as an enemy to fight, but rather as a natural part of the human experience, we free ourselves to live more intentionally, to cherish every moment. And ironically, we start preparing for a more dignified and calm passing, which is a gift to both ourselves and our loved ones. Despite the growing awareness of death doulas in some part of the world, unfortunately, they're still not that well known in Canada. They are better known in the capital cities. You may never have heard of an end-of-life doula or death doula before today, and that's okay. It's still emerging, and in many ways it's still in its infancy. There's no official regulation for the work of death doulas here yet, which means that anyone can technically call themselves one. So it's not like doctors where there's strict qualifications and certifications. You're sort of on your own when it comes to figuring out if a death doula is the right fit for you. And that's why it's so important to do your research. You want to find someone who has their business license and insurance. You want to... It's kind of like looking for the right therapist. You have to click with them. You need to feel comfortable and trust them. And I know that's so hard with this vulnerable aspect of life. But especially because death is such a vulnerable moment, it's deeply personal journey, and you want to work with someone who aligns with your values and your wishes and who can provide the support you need emotionally and spiritually. Speaking for myself, I mean, I know there's a lot of death doulas who have healthcare aid certifications or nursing certifications, and they are able to physically assist. I myself am hands-off. I don't want to move someone and then possibly hurt them or mess anything up. I'm there for their brains and their hearts and their souls, and I'm there for the family as well. You know, my client isn't just the person who is dying. It's their loved ones. And I'll stay with the family and loved ones for up to a year after a death to make sure that they have the right resources and support that they need so that they don't get stuck in grief. Because it's so easy to get stuck in grief, I think, especially because that's your last emotion, your last new emotion tied to the love of this person or thing or place that you had in your life. And there's so many different things to grieve. Loss of identity, loss of self, loss of job, loss of... There's a lot of things, and even just with death. Not everyone has the privilege of growing old. And it is a privilege. We don't all get to do it. Some people die much sooner when they should have had a long, happy life. Some people's lives are cut short by the anger and violence of other people, or by the anger and violence of themselves. And each one carries with it a different complex emotion. And one that I can speak to personally is when my father passed away in 2018, we were estranged at the time. That is a whole different layer I can't even explain. That leaves a whole new list of questions. So, finding the right death doula is important. They will help you feel seen and heard and respected. And that's what's most important when you're preparing for a peaceful and dignified passing. And even if you're not, even if that is not your reality, that doesn't mean that you're not deserving of a dignified passing. So when looking for a death doula, take your time. Find someone who listens to you and understands your needs and who you feel at ease with. It's not just about choosing someone who's knowledgeable. It's about choosing someone who feels right. Trust your gut and know that this is a person who will guide you and your loved ones with compassion and care. And as far as pricing goes, it's different across the board. I've seen some death doulas will charge around $80 an hour, and that depends on if they're doing remote, if they're traveling, if they have a brick and mortar. I've seen other death doulas go up to $140 an hour. And that's because they have the life experience and knowledge about what to do and how to do it. So pick the one that is right for you. And unfortunately, right now, death doulas in Canada are not regulated. I know this is a bit of a hot topic amongst the death doula community. And I know there's red tape and everything that we'd have to go through. But my dream is to be able to have death doulas covered by insurance so that anyone can have a death doula. It should be available for everyone. And right now, if you have a death doula, it's a privilege. It's a privilege to be able to have it. And so one day soon, I hope we'll just be everywhere helping everyone out. Pardon me. So one thing I get asked a lot is, what religion or beliefs do you support as a death doula? And my role as a death doula isn't tied to any one religion or spiritual practice. What I do is I meet my clients where they're at. And I just want to say, I have to call them clients. I want to call them friends. I want to call them dear. But I need to remind myself to stay in my doula lane and be that objective presence. And that is what I have chosen. That is my part in life that I have chosen. And so I need to mourn my own way in my own time. And later on, I'll tell you about the circle of grief theory. But the basic premise is always lean out. Lean out to someone who is not as close to the situation as you. Because that would be wildly inappropriate for me to go to my clients' loved ones seeking comfort. That's not what I'm there for. I'm there to give them comfort. And if that's something you think you'd have a hard time doing, then possibly being an end-of-life doula will be much more difficult for you. If you are thinking of becoming an end-of-life doula, and that's why you're listening to this podcast, I recommend reading as many of the books as you can, and also start volunteering at the local hospice or hospital. Get to know the people that you would actually be helping and see them at the end of their lives And if this is something that still resonates with you and calls to you after a few months of that, then go for the course online and keep pursuing it. And anyways, what was I talking about? Religion, yes. So I support each individual where they are on their journey. Everyone has different beliefs and values that are unique to them, and that's something that I deeply respect. I work with people of all faiths, or no faith at all, and I'll help them die in a way that feels most meaningful to them. This is the you story. I'm here for you. I'm just helping you write the last chapter. That could be by honoring a specific tradition or a prayer, or it could be creating the perfect environment for someone to feel at ease. And it really is about offering a safe space for people to explore their own spirituality or beliefs without judgment. I don't care what sex you are, or religion you are, or skin color you are. It doesn't matter what you believe in. I mean, of course it does, but you know what I mean. Without judgment, I'm going to help you find comfort in the way that feels right for you. And that's whether someone is deeply spiritual, agnostic, or atheist. My job is to ensure that they're supported with love and dignity. And that's whatever that looks like for them. That's one of the hard parts about this job, is you have to be able to remove your ego from the situation. So if you're wondering if I have a certain religious lens that I apply to my work, the answer is no, I don't. I hold space for people, and I help guide them towards peace in a way that aligns with their beliefs and wishes. Of course, I mean, obviously, I do have my own beliefs, values, and wishes, but when I'm with a client, it's not about me. It's about them, and I refuse to take that away from them. In that moment, what I believe doesn't matter. I also do as much research as possible to understand different religions and belief systems so that I'm better equipped to support someone in the way they want. And if that means they've requested a certain prayer or a certain song or a healer or a shaman, or like, I will do everything I can to support you. And another reason why I believe that the need for death doulas is going to grow in Canada, especially North America overall, we're on the verge of a demographic shift. Canadians are living longer than ever. The average life expectancy has actually increased. I think the average lifespan of a Canadian is 84. We're getting into our 80s and 90s more than we ever did before. But here's the thing. Those people who are living longer are the baby boomers, and they're now entering their senior years. And as this generation continues to age, the need for death doulas will only become more critical. In the next 10 years, we're going to see an explosion in the need for compassionate, thoughtful end-of-life care. Baby boomers have spent their lives rejecting traditional one-size-fits-all approach to healthcare. And now as they approach the end of their lives, many are looking for a more personalized and holistic support, kind of bringing back the human element. You know, hospitals weren't created for us to die in. They weren't made for us to die in. They were made for us to be treated in. But more and more, we're dying in hospital because of different diseases and different care. And there are other options possible. You can have at-home care that is wildly popular right now. A lot of people are choosing to die at home. And honestly, if I had that choice, I would take that too. Of course, I want to be surrounded by my animals and my favorite people and in my sanctuary. For some people that's not possible, and that's okay. We can bring pieces of your sanctuary to you. And death doulas can fill this gap by offering, specific tailored services, emotional guidance, and helping families navigate that sensitive time with grace and peace. And, you don't know what you don't know. So if you have this brand new diagnosis, at least from personal experience, they will give you a pamphlet and tell you to call your general practitioner and send you on your way. And then you're stuck there like, all right, here's my new disease. What do I do? How do I deal with this? And you read the pamphlet and it's super cheesy and you wish it was just a little bit more realistic, and it's frustrating. And so one of my roles is to go through the situation with you and go through questions that you may have. Things that you should ask your doctor, things that should not go ignored. With pain and home care and losing your dignity and things like that, it's so hard to go through. It shouldn't be just cold and clinical and online only, and your call is important to us and will be answered in rotation. So while death doulas may not be a household name yet, they're coming. And as this new generation of seniors continues to age, we're going to see an increased demand for this kind of work. And so now is the time to start talking about it, start learning about it, and start normalizing these conversations. So here's to life, here's to death, here's to everything before us and everything coming after us. And remember, it's okay to talk about it. And, a little history lesson. The word doula actually comes from ancient Greek, meaning to serve. And that's exactly what we do as death doulas. We serve. We help each other at the most vulnerable time in their lives. And it's not easy. There is a mental toll that comes with being a death doula, or anyone working in the death care industry. Nurses, caretakers, undertakers, palliative care workers, embalmers, funeral directors. It's emotionally draining. You're walking alongside families and individuals who are grieving and who are in crisis, navigating one of the hardest moments of their life. Nobody calls me because they're having a fantastic day and they just want to talk about it. And while it's deeply rewarding to be able to help guide someone to peace, it can be a lot to carry. And for some people out there, I just want to say, just because you carry it well doesn't mean it's not heavy. Sometimes the grief can be overwhelming and it takes a toll on your own mental health. And that's why self-care is so important in this line of work. It's not just about helping others. We also have to make sure we're taking care of ourselves so we can show up for others. The saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. You should fill your cup and keep it full. And anything that overflows, that's what you give. So yeah, the work I do is heavy, but it's incredibly meaningful. And the closer to death that I am, the more alive I feel. And despite the emotional challenges, this work is a calling. It's an honor to serve others in their final moments and to ensure that death isn't something to fear, but something that can be approached with dignity and love and peace. And I just want to say that death is not a secret. Let's talk about it. You can find me online on social media as DearPsychopomp or by email at contact@DearPsychopomp.com. Thank you for tuning in today to episode 2, and we'll see you next time with a special interview.